Welcome to another episode of Sean's Take on Asia, where we touch on the latest news on digital asset development and policy updates. So the news of trade war and tariffs dominates our news wires these days, whether you're in Canada, Europe, or Asia. You can see all the latest narratives on the reciprocal tariffs from the perceived notion of trade imbalances and whether these tariffs can really have the intended effect. No need for me to cover any of that here. What I do want to cover, though, are some numbers to illustrate how the world of trade has progressed significantly over the past 20 to 30 years and why pressure tactics might not work as well this time around. First, let's look at the area of trade and economic integration and compare how the world's two largest economies have fared over the years. In the year 2000, U.S. trade with the 10 ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia was $135 billion, which was a result of the U.S. opening itself up to the region. That same year, China's trade with ASEAN was only $40 billion. So China's trade was more than 3 times China's trade with ASEAN back in the year 2000. Fast forward to 2021. U.S. trade with ASEAN has grown significantly, almost 3 times from 135 billion to 380 billion, a massive increase. But China's trade with ASEAN, because of its free trade agreements with the region signed in 2001, went from $40 billion to almost $1 trillion, an increase of 25 times in 20 years. An increase of this size have never happened before. Let me give you a comparison. The US and the European Union are 2 of the largest world economic entities in the world, and they've had trading relationship for hundreds of years. How much did they trade in the recent year? 900 billion, less than the trillion between China and ASEAN. So this is an example of the dramatic shift that are all happening in the last 20 years. The largest trade agreements in the world used to be the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. But now it is the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which became effective in 2022. The region in RCEP, Asia. Let's also look at the trade and economic integration not only amongst the Asia region, but with the rest of the world too. When China joined the WTO in 2001, 5 decades after the US did, the US economy was then 8 times larger than that of China. By 2013, China's trade with the world has become larger than that of the US. China's trade with the world is now over 1.3 times larger than the US, and more critically, more than 120 countries now trade more with China than they do with the US. And it isn't just countries that are close geographically to Asia. For example, Brazil historically is much closer to the US than it is to China. But in 2022, Brazil's trade with China of $150 billion was larger than US trade with Brazil of $93 billion. It has grown so fast that in the year 2000, it took Brazil 1 year to export $1 billion to China. Now it takes Brazil 72 hours to export $1 billion to China. That is called the speed of change. The center of gravity of the world's economy has been shifting to Asia, and this shift is unstoppable. Will the new rounds of tariffs and trade war affect this shift? Absolutely. This will push it even further. That's all for this episode of Sean's Take on Asia. If you like this content, please follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until next time, keep innovating and keep demonstrating the transformational promise of Web3.